Good. So last time we talked about homeostasis. We looked at some homeostatic mechanisms. We looked at how glucose is regulated, how water is regulated, how sodium and potassium ions are regulated. And I promised that we would look at temperature regulation also. So today I'm going to introduce you to temperature regulation. And if we have some time, we would, I would explain again negative feedback and positive feedback mechanisms. Positive feedback and negative feedback. I mentioned it already before. Yeah. I would love to explain more in details today. So we would start with, I think we should start with negative and positive feedback first before we go to temperature regulation. Let's start with negative and positive feedback. So I'm just going to explain what a negative feedback is and what a positive feedback is. And then after that, we would take examples and I would explain temperature regulation as an example of feedback mechanism. Good. So let me share my screen with you again. Share screen. So in this picture that I'm going to share with you, you would see an example of a negative feedback, but I need to first explain what a negative feedback is. We said in the last class that homeostatic mechanisms operate by way of feedback mechanism. So what is a feedback? The feedback is like giving a report. Maybe I send you on an errand, yeah, and then when you come back, you give me a feedback. You tell me what happened, you know, and what you did when you got there. So a feedback mechanism in medicine is a process in which some proportion of the output signal of a system is fed or passed back or reported back to the inputs. So in homeostatic mechanism, you have a process. That process has an input, and that input leads to an output. But that output is reported to the input. That is feedback. So the output gives reports or sends signals back to the inputs. So feedback
is it like receptors, the brain centers and effectors?
Yes, yes, that's what we talked about, the sensors or the detectors, yes? And then the detectors will have, after the detectors, we'll have the control center, yes? And then the control center now send messages to effector organs. So that is the homeostatic mechanism. That is the feedback mechanism. Why? Because when detectors dictate something, right, they send messages to controllers, and the controllers send messages to effectors, and then effectors react to bring about a certain change, which is the output. But that output must be communicated back to the initial inputs, either to the control center or to the effector, that this is what we got. So that will now help the effector or the control center to know whether to stop the action or to continue the action. So that is feedback mechanism. So in simple terms, a feedback mechanism simply involves some proportion of the output signal of a system is sent back to the inputs. Now, why does this happen? This is done more often intentionally in order to control the behavior of the system. For example, when I send signals, when osmoreceptors, like we said the last time, when osmoreceptors, in the hypothalamus sense that there is lack of, or there is excess water, or there is lack of water in the body, or there is increase in osmolarity of the blood, it initiates a process, and that process will lead to the release of a hormone, antidiuretic hormone, like we said the last time, yeah, to prevent water loss. So antidiuretic hormone prevents the loss of water so that we could maintain a steady osmolarity of the blood. So that action that takes place in the kidney, which we said the last time, that water will be reabsorbed from the kidney, yes, into the blood. So that action, once that action happens, we will have a normal osmotic pressure of the blood. So that result will be sent back. So that is feedback, will be sent back to the hypothalamus that now we have a normal amount of, water in the blood. So that is feedback mechanism. But what happens when that signal gets back to the brain, for example, determines whether the feedback is a negative one or is a positive one. So feedback generally means sending reports or impulses back to the initial organ or control center that initiated the process. But a feedback mechanism could either be negative or positive. Now, whenever any change occurs, system receives and reacts to two types of feedback. So we have a negative feedback and a positive feedback. So what is the difference between a negative feedback and a positive feedback? In simple terms, in a negative feedback, when the output signal is sent back to the input, it stops the input from further action. When the output signal is sent back to the input, it stops the input from further action. That is negative. So it means that the response from the output opposes the initial input. For example, once antidiuretic hormone is released, as we said the last time, and the amount of water in the blood is normalized, what will happen? Osmoreceptors need to dictate that now we have a normal amount of water in the blood. So we have to stop the production of antidiuretic hormone from the pituitary gland. So what happened? Once you get a normal amount of water, you have to stop the initial signal. So that's the negative effect. Okay, that is the negative feedback. But in a positive feedback, once signals get to the inputs, it doesn't stop the inputs. It energizes, it stimulates the input the more to continue to produce whatever was produced before. So that's positive feedback. But I'm going to show you examples so that you will understand it. So here, from this picture, you will see that a negative feedback is the one to which the system reacts in such a way as to arrest the change or reverse the direction of the change. So it arrests the initial change or reverse the direction of the change. I'm going to explain it better. After receiving a message, effectors send negative feedback signals back to the system. Now, the system stabilizes its own function and makes an attempt to maintain homeostasis. Now, let's look at this example that is given here. Last week, I already used antidiuretic hormone. I used aldosterone. I also used, what else now? Yes, I used aldosterone. I also use natriuretic peptide, yes, to explain negative feedback. But today, let's look at another example of negative feedback. So this is thyroid stimulating hormone. When you get to 4th year, you will do endocrinology and you will study the thyroid gland. But in physiology also, you will study the thyroid gland and the functions of the thyroid gland. So this is how the thyroid hormone works, or how the thyroid gland works. Now, here you will see that there is a normal level of thyroxine. By the way, the thyroid gland produces 2 main hormones. There are 3 of them, but the 2 main hormones are thyroxine and triiodothyronine. So T3 and T4. T4 is called thyroxine. So thyroxine is T4. And then T3 is triiodothyronine. These are the 2 hormones produced in the thyroid gland. And the thyroid gland is located in your neck region, the anterior part of your neck. That is where you have the thyroid gland, right?
Yes.
In biology, you would have heard about the thyroid gland, right?
Yes, sir.
Good. So it produces 2 main hormones, the T3 and T4. T3 is triiodothyronine, and then T4 is thyroxine. Now, there's another hormone that is produced in the thyroid gland that is called calcitonin. Yeah, but that one has another function. It's for calcium metabolism. Yeah, but T3 and T4 they regulate body metabolism. You know, they have a lot of functions in the body. One of them is to maintain body metabolism, temperature regulation, yeah, and all of that to increase metabolic rates. We'll talk about that later when we get to the thyroid gland. But what I want to explain to you is how it functions. Now, before the thyroid gland can be released from the thyroid gland, there is another hormone that is called the thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH. So this thyroid stimulating hormone is coming from the pituitary gland, the anterior pituitary gland. So that hormone comes from the anterior pituitary gland, and it stimulates the thyroid gland to release thyroxine or triiodothyronine. So that is why it is called TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. So this hormone stimulates the thyroid gland. But let's say the homeostatic mechanism or the negative feedback of how the thyroid gland functions. So here, let's start from this place. Normal level of thyroxine. So this is the normal level of thyroxine that we are supposed to have in the body. Now, imagine that there was an increased secretion of thyroxine. So it means that the thyroid gland increased the secretion of thyroxine. Now, once there is an increase in secretion, something would have led to this increase in secretion, okay? Something would have led to it. Maybe the person was in a cold place, cold weather, or in winter, and the guy needs to regulate his body temperature. So there's an increase in secretion of thyroxine. Now, I told you before that for the thyroid gland to secrete thyroxine, it must be stimulated first by another hormone called the thyroid stimulating hormone, yes?
Yes, sir.
Now, there is increased secretion of thyroxine already. So since there is already increased secretion of thyroxine, do we still need the thyroid stimulating hormone to stimulate the thyroid gland to produce more thyroxine? No. Why? Once we have increased secretion of thyroxine, thyroxine goes to perform its function, maybe to regulate the temperature. Once the temperature has become normal, for example, there has to be an inhibition of the thyroid gland. So what will happen? There will be messages will be sent. Messages will be sent to the regulatory center to tell the thyroid gland, stop producing you know, thyroxine. We don't need thyroxine anymore because the temperature has already been regulated. You get? But in this picture, what this picture is showing you is different. This picture is showing you how this thyroid stimulating hormone affects thyroxine secretion. So now we have a normal level of thyroxine. And then there was an increased secretion of thyroxine. What will happen? There will be an inhibition of thyroid stimulating hormone. Why? Because anytime there is high thyroxine in the blood, we don't need
the
TSH anymore because we already have high thyroxine. Okay, so there will be inhibition of thyroid stimulating hormone. It means that my pituitary gland will stop producing thyroid stimulating. Okay? Now, once my pituitary gland stop the secretion of thyroid stimulating hormone, what will now happen? There will be a decreased secretion of thyroxine because it is thyroxine that is supposed to increase, it is TSH that is supposed to increase thyroxine secretion. But now there is inhibition of TSH from the anterior pituitary gland. So that will lead to a decrease in the secretion of thyroxine so that the normal level of thyroxine will be achieved again. So what happened? Watch. Increased secretion of thyroxine led to inhibition of thyroid stimulating hormone, which now led to a decrease in secretion of thyroxine. So this initial signal here eventually led to the opposite effect. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
So that is why it's called negative feedback. So what you have here is the opposite of what started this. So normal level of thyroxine, increase in thyroxine level led to a signal which caused inhibition of TSH, and that signal will now lead to a decrease in thyroxine. So increase in thyroxine has a negative effect on itself. What's the negative effect? Decrease in thyroxine. So that is called a negative feedback. Now, let's look at this other side. Normal level of thyroxine, decrease. So imagine that something happened and there was a decreased secretion of thyroxine. So if there is decreased secretion of thyroxine, your body wants to do something to increase the thyroxine secretion. So what happens? Your pituitary gland will stimulate the release of thyroid stimulating hormone because this is the hormone that will increase thyroxine. So what will happen once there is stimulation? There will be an increased secretion of thyroxine. So what happened now? This increase is the opposite of this decrease. So this decrease initiated a process, a homeostatic process, which led to TSH secretion. But this TSH secretion has a negative effect on this initial signal, thereby producing an increase in thyroxine. So this is what we call a negative feedback. The goal of this negative feedback is to maintain a balance, to have a normal level of thyroxine. So when the amount of thyroxine is too high, the body will act to reduce the amount of thyroxine. So that is negative feedback. When the amount of thyroxine is too low, the body will act to increase the amount of thyroxine. Negative feedback, okay? Good. Now, we said the goal of a negative feedback is to maintain homeostasis, and that is what this diagram has shown here, that a negative feedback is maintained. Anytime I have high thyroxine, I must inhibit thyroid stimulating hormone so that, because if I don't inhibit thyroid stimulating hormone, what will happen is that more and more thyroxine will be produced, which could be dangerous at the end of the day. So to prevent that danger, or what we call a vicious circle, to prevent that vicious circle, we need to inhibit TSH so that we can decrease thyroxine and have a normal amount of thyroxine. When tyrosine decreases, we need to stimulate TSH, so that we can increase the amount. So this is negative feedback. The output is opposite to the input. That is what happens in a negative feedback. But in a positive feedback, I'm going to share my screen again to show you a positive feedback. In a positive feedback, we do not have a negative effect. We have a positive effect. Let me try to show you an example of a positive feedback. Share screen. 1 minute. Let me share this. Okay. Share screen. Good. So in this diagram I'm going to show you now, you will see an example of a positive feedback. So you will see the difference. Now let's look at this diagram. Now there are 2 examples of positive feedback here, 2 examples. Remember that in negative feedback, today I gave you only an example of thyroid stimulating hormone, but last week I talked about antidiuretic hormone and water regulation, that is negative feedback. I talked about sodium regulation with aldosterone, that is negative feedback, and the control of sodium and potassium ions is negative feedback, also. So 3 examples of negative feedback. Now, today I will also give you another example of negative feedback later when we look at temperature regulation. But let's take positive feedback now. Now, for positive feedback, what happens is that the initial input leads to a process, and that process leads to the production of an output. But that output stimulates the original input to continue, the process, not to stop it, but to continue it. So that is the positive feedback. So positive feedback is the one to which the system reacts in such a way as to increase the intensity of the change. So that initial change that happens is increased the more. I'm going to explain that to you. So let's take blood coagulation or blood clot formation. So coagulation of blood is an example of a positive feedback. Why? Now, let's start from here. When your blood vessels are injured, in anatomy, we looked at the blood vessel. We looked at the histology of the blood vessel, where we talked about the endothelium of the blood vessel, yeah? And we said that that endothelium could easily be injured, right? So when there's an injury to that endothelium, so this is injury to blood vessel, it will lead to bleeding, okay? Now, once that bleeding takes place, a process will be initiated, which is called the blood clotting process. And what happens is that there is the formation of prothrombin activator. In pathophysiology, I'm going to teach you the process of blood clotting and all the clotting factors. There are about 12 main blood clotting factors, which I'll teach you later. So, but one of the things that happen is that there is a formation of what we call prothrombin activator. So injury to blood vessel causes bleeding, and that bleeding leads to the formation of a prothrombin activator. This prothrombin activator will lead to the formation or the conversion of an enzyme called prothrombin into thrombin. Injury to blood vessel, formation of prothrombin activator, conversion of prothrombin into thrombin. And then this thrombin causes the conversion of fibrinogen into fibrin. Now, this fibrin forms what we call a network or a mesh, or what you call a blood clot. And it is that blood clot that stops the bleeding. When you have an injury, if you look at the surface of that place, after some time, after the bleeding, And after some time, you will notice that you will see something that is like dark red clots formed on the surface of that injury to cover the place where you had the cut, yeah, on your skin, for example. So that is a clot that has been formed to block blood loss, excessive blood loss through bleeding. But something happens. When we go to the conversion of prothrombin into thrombin, now watch this. Injury to blood vessel and bleeding, formation of prothrombin activator, and then conversion of prothrombin into thrombin. But the process did not just lead to conversion of fibrinogen into fibrin alone. This conversion of prothrombin also went back to stimulate the formation of prothrombin activator again. So prothrombin activator led to the conversion of prothrombin into thrombin. And this thrombin will do two things. One, it will convert fibrinogen into fibrin. Two, it will activate, it will come back again. That's why this red arrow is going back. It will go back again to strengthen this process, to repeat this process, not to stop it, but to activate it again. Yeah. So because it is going back to activate this process, we'll call it a positive feedback. Okay. So formation of prothrombin activator leads to conversion of prothrombin into thrombin, and this conversion of prothrombin into thrombin again activate the formation of prothrombin activator, and then conversion of prothrombin into thrombin, another activation of prothrombin activator, conversion of prothrombin into thrombin. So the process continues. Why? Because all of this process leads to the formation of this fibrin. So the reason why conversion of prothrombin into thrombin activates prothrombin activator again is so that more thrombin will be formed. And the more thrombin you form, the more fibrinogen is converted into fibrin until the blood is stopped. The bleeding is stopped. So this is the positive feedback. As long as the bleeding has not stopped, this process will keep repeating itself until the bleeding is stopped. So this is a positive feedback. So the initial signal led to the production of thrombin, but this production of thrombin activates the initial signal again to produce more thrombin. So it is called a positive feedback. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Good. Now, another example of positive feedback is labor, when a woman is in labor and she wants to give birth to a child. So once there is an onset of labor, that process does not stop until the child is born. Now, onset of labor, what happens? The uterus, the muscles of the womb contract. Now, this contraction will stimulate the movement of the fetus into the cervix. That will lead to a dilatation of the cervix, and then the fetus will move through the cervix, and then that movement will stimulate receptors in the cervix, and now there'll be a discharge of impulses from these receptors, and this discharge of impulses from the receptors will be transmitted to the hypothalamus of the brain, and then that will lead to the release of oxytocin from the hypothalamus. Now, the hypothalamus produces oxytocin, but the oxytocin is stored in the posterior pituitary gland. I told you that there are two hormones from the posterior pituitary gland. They are antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin. Don't forget. But they are produced in the hypothalamus, but they are stored in the posterior pituitary gland. So all of this process keeps stimulating each other until the release of oxytocin from hypothalamus. Now, when this oxytocin is released from the hypothalamus, the labor does not stop. What happens? This oxytocin leads to more contraction of the uterus. So the job of oxytocin is to cause more contraction of the uterus, and then this whole process will start again, and more oxytocin is released again, contraction of the uterus, movement of the fetus to the cervix, dilatation of the cervix, movement of the fetus through the cervix, stimulation of receptors. Receptors send impulses to hypothalamus. Hypothalamus releases oxytocin. Oxytocin again stimulates the endometrium or the muscles of the uterus to contract again. So this whole process continues until the baby is born. Now, this is a positive feedback.
So like positive feedback is about one action is taken, like onset of injury, not like increase, decrease.
Yes, it's not increase, decrease. It is until one complete action is finalized. So that is what happens in positive feedback. It is not like you are trying to maintain the normal amount of glucose or the normal amount of water. No, you want to achieve something, and the process does not stop until you achieve that goal. So that is what happens in a positive feedback. So the initial inputs, this contraction started because of oxytocin, okay? Now, that will still lead again to the release of oxytocin. And oxytocin will cause more contraction, lead to the release of more oxytocin until the child is eventually born. So that is what happens in a positive feedback. So two examples of positive feedback are blood clotting process and positive feedback mechanism. Okay?
So if you say like your hand breaks
and labor, blood clotting and labor are the two main examples of positive feedback.
So I'm saying, if let's say you break your bone.
Sorry?
Let's say you break your bone or something.
Your bone?
Yes.
Okay.
Is he going to use positive feedback for like osteoblast and all these other things?
No, so that one, what you need to do, for example, if you are lacking, maybe you break your bone or you're having osteoporosis or there's weakness of the bone, osteomalacia, what you need to do is to produce more osteoblast, more cells need to be produced. So your body will keep producing osteoblasts until you have enough bone cells to replace the missing bone or the weak bone. So you will keep strengthening that bone. So it should use the positive feedback until the complete healing takes place.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, until a complete healing takes place. Because that one, you're not trying to maintain a normal amount of, a nutrient or something. What you need to do, you need to produce more bone cells to replace the missing bone cells until you have a complete healing. Once that complete healing is done, then you might not need to continue that process of. But of course, in your body, there has to be a continual, for example, for cells that die easily, there need to be a complete replacement of those cells. So you will have a complete production of those cells to replace the ones that are dead already. The same thing happens in your skin also. There are dead cells on the surface of your skin, but some of these dead cells are produced in the basal layer of the skin to replace the dead cells. So that process will continue. As long as the cells are dying, there will be a continuous process of production. Okay? Good. Yeah, now, let me see. I need to show you another picture. To explain positive and negative feedback. So the picture I'm going to show you this time, let me me see. Yes. So I'm going to show you this picture, which I already explained last time, but I want to show you again why I said it is negative feedback. So this picture is a picture of water regulation, which we did in the last class, but I want to show you why it is an example of a negative feedback using this diagram. So here in this picture, you will see water regulation. So this is normal water contents, normal water contents. Now, imagine there is a decrease in water contents. And we said 3 main things can lead to a decrease in water content. Maybe you don't drink enough water, or you are sweating a lot, yeah, or you eat a lot of salt, or you urinate a lot, yeah. So there'll be a decrease in your water content. Or even if you have, for example, you have diarrhea, yeah, you could lose a lot of water, yeah, from your body. So let's assume that there's a decrease in your water content. Now, what does your body need to do? Osmoreceptors sense that there is a decrease in water content or increase in osmolarity. So stimulation of osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus, what do? They increase the ADH secretion, antidiuretic hormone, from the posterior pituitary. So I said that this hormone is produced in the hypothalamus, but it is stored in the posterior pituitary gland, yes? Now, this hormone goes to the kidney to increase water reabsorption from the kidney into the blood. And then what will happen? We'll have a normal water content. Now, once we have this normal water content, we need to stop the release of aldosterone, antidiuretic hormone. We need to stop it. Because if you don't stop it, what will happen eventually is that even though you now have a normal water content, your body will still be removing water from your urine into your blood. So you will now have excess water in your blood if you don't stop the antidiuretic hormone. So you have to stop antidiuretic hormone, and that is why it is called a negative feedback. So now you have the normal water content here, okay? Imagine that there was an increase in water content. Maybe you drank a lot of water, or it's very cold weather and you're not sweating a lot, yeah? What will happen? There will be no stimulation of osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus, no stimulation. Since there is no stimulation, it means there will be a decreased ADH secretion from the posterior pituitary, and that will lead to decreased water retention by the kidneys. So you have a normal water content. So you see that this side is the opposite of what this side. So that is why it is a negative feedback. By the way, here, when there's a decrease in water content, one of the ways you will know is that you'll be thirsty, you feel thirsty. So anytime you feel thirsty to drink water, know that your body has a decreased water content, okay? Or know that there is increase in osmolarity of your body system. So what should you do? You need to increase your water intake while your homeostatic mechanism is trying to do what it can to prevent water loss by the kidney, to normalize the water content. So this taste helps you to drink water to normalize it, while the normal homeostatic mechanism through antidiuretic hormone is also acting to normalize it. But once the normal amount is reached, the production of antidiuretic hormone will be stopped. That is negative feedback. Okay?
Also.
Good. So let's go to another one. Show you another picture. Then we'll go to temperature regulation. Yeah, I think I have one more picture here. Okay. Yeah, I think that is all I have for the positive feedback and negative feedback. So now we need to go to temperature regulation. Temperature regulation. I want to show you temperature regulation, how your body regulates the temperature. So let me share my screen again. Temperature regulation. Okay, I'm going to start with two pictures. Let me start with two pictures before I go to the lecture material that I have here. So the first picture I'm going to show you is telling you what your body does to regulate your temperature when the temperature, when your body temperature is too cold. What will your body do to increase your body temperature? Remember that the normal body temperature is supposed to be around 37 degrees or 36.6 degrees. So between 36.6 degrees and 37.1 degree is a normal body temperature. So look at this. Look at this. Share screen, share screen, share screen. Okay, good. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Good. So in temperature regulation, we'll look at introduction, what normal temperature is, how your body loses heat, and how your body gains heat, the mechanisms involved, regulation of body temperature, and what will happen if your body fails to regulate temperature. So by way of introduction, we have what we call a homeothermic. Homeothermic simply means maintaining constant internal body temperature. Homeostasis is maintaining a steady internal environment, yes? But that internal environment, temperature is part of the internal environment that we need to maintain. So the process of maintaining that is homeothermic, right? So if you are able to maintain your body temperature, you will be regarded as an homeothermic organism or an endotherm. So an endotherm means organism that can generate their own body heat. And we humans, we have the ability to maintain our own body temperature. We are homeothermic in nature because we can maintain our own body temperature. Now, so why should we maintain our body temperature? Because three main reasons. One, for normal enzyme activity. All enzymes in your body, they function only under certain temperatures. The day your temperature rises too high, it could lead to a destruction of your enzymes, and your enzymes can no longer function. We will have what we call, because your enzymes are protein in nature, yes? And these proteins are made up of bonds, okay? An excessively high temperature could break those bonds and destroy those bonds that hold the enzymes together. And so we have what we call denaturing of proteins. So an excessively high temperature could lead to denaturing of proteins. And once proteins are denatured, their structure is destroyed. The bonds holding them together is destroyed. And so the enzymes can no longer function. And once enzymes are can no longer function, you are in trouble, because almost all activities in your body that are regulated by enzymes will be altered, or they will stop. Digestion will no longer be able to take place because there are digestive enzymes that, regulate digestion. So once you have excessive temperature that can destroy those enzymes, there will be no longer digestion again. And the same thing will happen for all processes that happen, respiration will be affected, because in respiration, there are a lot of enzymes involved in respiration. There's something we call the Krebs cycle. There are a lot of enzymes involved in the Krebs cycle. There's something we call glycolysis. There's a lot of enzymes involved in glycolysis. In your mitochondria, there are a lot of enzymes, and they all function only under normal temperature. That is one reason why your body must do everything it can to regulate your temperature and keep it within the normal amounts. Otherwise, enzymes will no longer be able to function, and that will lead to crisis. It will lead to death even. Again, your neurons, your nerve cells, all need a normal temperature to function also. So when your temperature increases abnormally, it could lead to, dysfunction of your neurons. Now, the same thing will happen if your temperature falls below normal also. If your temperature falls too low, all metabolic activities will cease, because they all depend on your temperature, on normal body temperature to function. Okay, again, if your temperature rises too high, most of your cells will be destroyed, So we need to regulate the body temperature. And the third thing, which I already mentioned, is that a rise in high temperature causes denaturing of protein. Proteins will lose their structure. And when they lose their structure, they can no longer function again. When they lose their structure, they lose their function. And once proteins stop functioning, that cell is dead already, because all processes that happen in the body are regulated by proteins. Your growth, the growth of all your cells, whether it is bone cells, whether it is blood cells, any kind of cell at all, they all function based on proteins. And you know that at the molecular level, maybe you will do this in biochemistry, at the molecular level, there's what we call protein synthesis. Yeah, and protein synthesis is formed when amino acids come together, you form proteins. But when temperature rises too high, that whole process is affected. And once there is no protein synthesis, there is no formation of any cell. There's no formation of anything. Nothing can be produced in your body. That is why you must regulate your temperature. Now, so what is the normal body temperature that we need to maintain? The normal body temperature, or the core temperature, is measured in the oral cavity, in your mouth, or in the rectal region, in the anus. You can also measure your temperature on your skin. You put the thermometer in your axilla, in your armpit, yes, and you can measure the temperature, or you put it in the oral cavity, or you put it in the anus, the rectal region, and you can measure the temperature. But each region gives you a different temperature value, okay? Now, we will look at temperatures. You could measure temperatures in Fahrenheit, degree Fahrenheit, or in degrees Celsius, okay? In America, they use Fahrenheit. In Africa and in Nigeria, they use the degrees Celsius. So what is the normal body temperature if you measure in the oral cavity? If you measure in the oral cavity, the normal body temperature is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, it could range from 97.3 to 98.8 degrees Fahrenheit. But the normal amount should be 98.6. But 97.3, from 97.3 to 98.8 is the range, the normal range, okay? Which does not cause problem. Or in degrees Celsius, it is 37 degrees Celsius, or 36.3 degrees to 37.1 degrees. That is the fluctuation, the range, the limit. It shouldn't go above that or below. Once it goes below that range, then you could have what is called hyperthermia and hypothermia. Now, but that is the oral temperature. In the rectal region, we have 0.5 degrees more than the oral region. So if I get 36.3 degrees, for example, or I get 37 degrees in the oral cavity, when I measure the temperature in the anus, it will be a little bit higher than 37 degrees. So if I measure in the anus, I will get 37.5 because it is 0.5 degrees higher than in the oral cavity. If I measure it in the axilla, in the armpit, it will be lower than 37 degrees. So I will get 36.5, for example, okay? Lower than the oral, that of the oral cavity. Then the temperature of the skin depends upon that of the environment. So the temperature of your skin depends on the environment. Now, during exercise, when you are doing exercise and you are sweating or your temperature is increased, you could get up to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. From 101 degrees to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember we said that the normal range, in the oral cavity is this. But for the skin, when you are doing exercise, your skin temperature can increase up to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. But it is not yet a problem at this value. It is not a serious problem yet at this value, but once it goes above this, then it's a huge problem. Now, we already said that the rectal temperature is 0.5 degrees greater than the oral temperature, and the oral temperature and the oral temperature is 0.5 degrees greater than that of the axilla also. Okay, good. Let's move to the next slide. So here, this slide is simply showing you what we have already said, that the usual range of the temperature is between 36.6 to 37. This is the usual range. Now, during a motion or moderate exercise, your temperature could increase up to 38 degrees Fahrenheit, okay, which is still not a problem yet because you are doing exercise, okay? Because you are doing exercise, so your body needs, there's increase in metabolic activities in your body that increases your temperature. But when you do severe exercise, temperature rises up to 40 degrees, okay? Because of the exercise. But when your temperature rises above 40 degrees, when you are at rest, you're not doing exercise, your temperature rises to 40 degrees, then you know that there's a serious problem that needs to be controlled, okay? So your body has to maintain the temperature. So how does your body, 1 minute, how does your body, by the way, your temperature drops, yes, early in the morning when you just wake up and your body is not doing any serious metabolic, activities. Your temperature is lower than 36, or when the weather is cold during winter, your temperature is lower than 36, okay? So how does your body maintain a normal temperature, which we said should be between 36.6 and 37.1 degrees? What does your body do to maintain this temperature? Now, here you see your body could initiate heat loss or initiate heat gain, depending on the temperature of the body at a particular time. So how does your body initiate heat gain? Pay attention to this heat gain mechanism. And one of the ways for your body to initiate heat gain is one, through shivering. So, but why does your body want to initiate heat gain? Because you are cold. So because you are cold, your body needs to initiate heat gain. So to initiate heat gain, you shiver. You will agree with me that there are times when you feel so cold and you begin to shiver. Yeah, you are shivering. So that shivering is a homeostatic mechanism. the reason why you are shivering is because you are cold. So your body uses that shivering to generate heat. So one way to gain heat when you are cold is through shivering. 2, your body increases your metabolism by releasing hormones like epinephrine. Another name for epinephrine is adrenaline. Okay, so your body increases the metabolism by releasing epinephrine, norepinephrine, and thyroxine. I told you under negative feedback of thyroxine that thyroxine helps to increase body metabolism, T3 and T4, thyroxine and triiodothyronine from the thyroid gland. Okay, so they control temperature. So 3 main hormones that you should remember that regulate temperature are epinephrine, norepinephrine, and thyroxine. Epinephrine is also called adrenaline. Norepinephrine is called noradrenaline. Okay, that's another name for it. So these hormones increase your metabolic processes to generate heat. And anytime your metabolic processes increase, heat is generated. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Good. So to gain heat, you need to have you shiver, your body shivers, and your body initiates the release of epinephrine, norepinephrine, and thyroxine. And then these hormones, especially epinephrine, causes vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction. When I was teaching you about blood vessels, I told you that smooth muscles, yes, in the tunica media of the blood vessels help the constriction of the blood vessels.
Yes,
so when you are cold, what your body does is that it causes vasoconstriction, cutaneous vasoconstriction. So the blood vessels that are close to the surface of the skin, they constrict. Now, why do they constrict? They constrict to reduce blood supply to the skin. Vasoconstriction reduces blood supply to the skin. And why are they reducing blood supply to the skin? Because when blood flows to the skin, the temperature of that blood can be conducted away from your body. You can lose heat from your skin, the surface of your skin. You can lose heat from the surface of your skin when blood flows there. So to prevent you losing heat, because you don't want to lose heat, you want to gain heat. You are cold. You want to preserve your heat. So you need to reduce blood supply to the surface of the skin. And once you reduce blood supply to the surface of the skin, you reduce heat loss through the skin. And then you conserve heat. So these are the 3 main mechanisms of heat gain in your body. Another thing your body does, which is not mentioned in this picture, is that the hair on your skin, yeah, the hair on your skin, they stand erect. You see goose pimples, yeah, goosebumps.
Mm.
When you are cold, what happens? You notice that all the hair on your skin are standing erect, yes? So
Yeah.
they are standing erect because when the hairs are standing erect, they prevent heat loss from your body. So remember, when the hairs of your skin are standing erect, they are doing that because they are preventing heat loss from your body. Because you are cold, you need to preserve heat. You don't want to lose heat, okay? So shivering, increase in metabolism by epinephrine, norepinephrine, and thyroxine, cutaneous vasoconstriction, and erection of the muscles or the hair of your skin. And that hair is controlled by the erector pili muscle, which you will see in subsequent slide. So here they are just showing you the epidermis, the dermis, and the subcutaneous tissue. So we said that the blood vessels that are close to the skin will become constricted to prevent blood flow to the surface, because when blood flows to the surface, you will lose heat, but you don't want to lose heat. Do you understand it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Now, heat loss mechanism. So to lose heat, why do you want to lose heat? Because you are hot. Your temperature has increased. So your body needs to look for a way to lose that excess temperature or heat that you have. So to do that, your body initiates sweating. Now, you notice that anytime you are hot, you sweat, isn't it? So why are you sweating? You are sweating because sweat helps to cool your body down. Sweat helps you to lose heat. Why? Because once you are sweating on the surface of your skin and air blows, maybe breeze blows through your skin, what happens? Heat is conducted away from your skin. Why? Because that sweat will evaporate. And the energy or the heat needed for the sweat to evaporate is taken from your skin. So we have what is called the latent heat of vaporization. Maybe you did physics. So the heat needed for that sweat to evaporate from your body is taken from your body. So that helps you to lose heat from your body. So sweat is a mechanism of heat loss so that you can lose heat from your body. Then sometimes radiation. When you are in a room, for example, that is kind of cold, a room that is colder than your temperature, or maybe you are very hot and then you enter a cold room and you are sitting close to the wall, there is heat loss from your body towards the wall, for example, or towards whatever the temperature is in that room, or even the air in the room. Your body loses heat to the environment through radiation. Even without coming in contact with the wall, there is heat exchange between the wall and your body through radiation, right? Then we have conduction and convection. So this one, your body comes in contact, for example, with here I have a cup with me. So when I touch the cup with my skin, my body loses heat to that cup because I'm very hot and the cup is cold. So once my body touches the cup, it loses heat. So that is conduction. Or when air blows through my skin, I lose heat to the air. So that is convection. Or maybe I enter a swimming pool and I'm swimming. Yes, heat is lost from my body to the water, to the cold water. So that is how I lose heat also. Then cutaneous vasodilation. Remember we said when you want to gain heat, there's vasoconstriction. When you want to lose heat, there's vasodilation. So when there is vasodilation, cutaneous vasodilation, the blood vessels close to the surface of your skin, they dilate and more blood flows to the surface of the skin. Why? So that the temperature or in that blood can be conducted away from your skin. You can lose that heat in the blood through the skin because you want to lose heat. So vasodilation. Then there is decrease in metabolism. So what does that mean? It means that we need to stop the secretion of thyroxine. Yes, we need to stop the secretion of epinephrine because they will help decrease metabolism. And then through respiration, as you are breathing. So anytime you are feeling so hot, you want to lose heat. The more you breathe faster. So as you are breathing, you see that hot air is coming from your nostrils. Okay, if you put your hand a little bit close to your nostrils and feel the temperature of the air that comes out, you will see that it is warm, a little bit warm air. So that is another way for you to lose heat from your body. So these are homeostatic mechanisms that help you to lose heat. So this diagram here is simply showing how you lose heat through radiation, or evaporation, and all of that, okay, that I already explained. Air current through convention, yeah? Good. And then this temperature here is showing you this diagram here is showing you your sweat gland, okay, your sweat gland and your sweat duct. So what happens is that when you want to lose heat, your sweat gland becomes more active, produces a lot of sweat, so that sweat can be carried to the surface of the skin, through the sweat duct. And once the sweat gets to the surface of the skin, what happens? There is evaporation of the sweat, and the heat for evaporation leaves your body, and that helps you to cool down a little. Okay, so that's what this diagram is about. Okay, let's see the next slide. So, regulation of body temperature, what is the role of the hypothalamus? So all of those things that we just explained now are initiated by the hypothalamus, because the hypothalamus have receptors, okay? So these receptors are warmth and cold receptors. They are able to dictate, what happens. These receptors are found majorly in your skin. First of all, take note, the receptors are found in your skin. The warmth and the cold receptors are found in your skin. But they are able to send signals to the hypothalamus to tell the hypothalamus to either cause the release of thyroxine or to stop the release of thyroxine. But apart from that, they also tell the hypothalamus to set, we have what we call the set point, which I'm going to show you, the set point of the temperature. So it is your hypothalamus that sets your temperature at a particular level. Once the hypothalamus sets the temperature at a particular level, your body now reacts to increase the temperature to that set point, that new set point. So hypothalamus is the major temperature regulatory center, but the receptors are found in your skin. The warmth and the cold receptors are found in your skin and deep within your tissues, and they send signals through the spinal cord until the signals get to the brain, the hypothalamus. Now in the hypothalamus, we have two control centers for temperature regulation. We have the heat loss center, which is the preoptic and the anterior hypothalamic nuclei. In anatomy, maybe they would have shown you these centers. Now, they regulate heat loss. Then we have the heat gain center, which is the posterior hypothalamus. Remember that I told you that the hypothalamus also regulates water balance, because there are osmoreceptors there. And these osmoreceptors cause the secretion of antidiuretic hormone, yes, from the good. Now, so what is the set point? So the set point of your body temperature is in a temperature level that the hypothalamus sets. And all metabolic activities must be in such a way as to maintain that steady temperature. And we have said that the normal temperature is 37 degrees. So that is the set point of the temperature. And it is the hypothalamus that makes sure that that temperature is maintained, that set point is maintained. So if your body temperature falls, for example, to, let's say you have 36 or 35 degrees Celsius, your hypothalamus does increases the set point to 37 and causes your body to react in such a way as to increase your body temperature to that set point of 37. So plus minus 0.1 degrees Celsius change. So any change in the temperature will cause the hypothalamus to activate heat loss or heat gain mechanism. So all the mechanism we talked about just now in the skin, the shivering, the vasoconstriction and all of that, it is the hypothalamus that initiates the heat gain and the heat loss mechanism.
So the hypothalamus is the effector?
No, it's not the effector. It will act as a controller.
Okay.
Yeah, because the effector is the skin that now dilates the blood vessels of the skin now dilate or constrict, or the hair muscles stand or sleep, you know. So that is the effector organ. So we have the dictators, which are the receptors in the skin. Yeah, they send signals to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the control center, initiates, send messages back to the skin. So the skin will now react again by either constricting the blood vessels or making the muscles of the hair to stand, the hair erector muscle to pull the hair to make the hair stand erect, or shivering, your body begin, your muscles and everything, begin to shiver. So that shivering of your body is so your skin is the effector. The muscles could also be the effector because they are shivering, also to bring about heat generation. But the hypothalamus will act as the control center. Okay? Good. Now, look at this diagram. So this is temperature decreasing mechanism when the body is too hot. So now your body is too hot, we need to decrease the temperature. So here we have the normal body temperature, which is set at 37 degrees. There is an increase in body temperature, maybe because you are in the sun or something happened that increased your body temperature. Maybe you did exercise or something, yeah? And then warmth receptors from the skin and the deep viscera would dictate this temperature, and they are stimulated, and then they send messages to the preoptic and anterior hypothalamic nuclei. And then these signals are sent to the posterior hypothalamus. And this posterior hypothalamus causes inhibition of sympathetic nervous system. Now pay attention to this. I told you before that when you want to increase your body temperature, epinephrine is released. Yes, epinephrine, norepinephrine. Yes. Epinephrine and norepinephrine are sympathetic mediators. They are sympathetic transmitters. They increase your body metabolism. They increase the heartbeats, you know, and every other thing. So, and for you to decrease your temperature, you must inhibit sympathetic nervous system. So it means we need to stop the release of adrenaline and noradrenaline. But do you know where adrenaline is released from?
From the kidney. The adrenal gland.
Adrenal gland, good. From the adrenal gland, from the adrenal medulla, because we have the adrenal cortex and the adrenal medulla. So from the adrenal medulla. So, but now we want to decrease temperature. Because we want to decrease temperature, we have to inhibit the secretion of epinephrine and norepinephrine. So inhibition of sympathetic nervous system. And when this happens, there will be vasodilation. Why? Because epinephrine causes vasoconstriction. So once you inhibit epinephrine or sympathetic nervous system, there will be vasodilation. Your sweat gland will produce a lot of sweat. And then there will be decrease in thermogenesis. So thermogenesis is heat production. So anything that will cause heat production will be stopped. So also it means that there will be a decrease in thyroxine action, because I told you that thyroxine increases body temperature. Thyroxine causes thermogenesis. Okay, but now we don't want thermogenesis. We want to stop heat production. So we have to stop thyroxine production also. So this is the mechanism of temperature decreasing, the mechanism to decrease your body temperature. Okay, good.
Perfect.
Now, this is temperature increasing mechanism when the body is too cold. So now you are cold. Now, this is your normal body temperature. The set point is 37. Something happened and there was a decrease in body temperature. Cold receptors from the skin are stimulated, and they stimulate the preoptic and anterior hypothalamic nuclei. which send impulses to the posterior hypothalamus. And this posterior hypothalamus now has to stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system increase the secretion of epinephrine, norepinephrine, thyroxine, yes? And all of these will lead to skin vasoconstriction to reduce blood flow to the skin, piloerection, so the hair, this piloerection, the hair of your skin, that goosebumps that you feel, the hair will stand erect, okay, to prevent heat loss from your body. And then there will be increase in thermogenesis, heat production, which is done by thyroxine. So thyroxine will increase all metabolic processes. There will be an increase in your metabolic rate. Thyroxine is act as a thermogenin, or causes thermogenesis or production of heat. Now imagine that somebody has a problem with their thyroid gland and they are no longer able to regulate their temperature. If you notice, when you see old people, yeah, during some of the old people during summer, they are wearing winter jackets, or let's say during summer, you see them still wearing jackets. Why? Because as you grow old, the ability of your thyroid gland to function decreases. So why are they still wearing winter jackets even though the weather is hot? Because they don't have enough thyroxine to increase their metabolic rate, to regulate their temperature. So they are feeling cold when everybody else is feeling hot. Why? Because the older you get, the decrease in function of your thyroid gland. So, and once your thyroid gland cannot produce thyroxine, or enough thyroxine, there will be no proper regulation of temperature. So there will be nothing to increase your temperature. Or other things might be trying to increase your temperature, but it is not enough. So you still feel cold when other people are feeling hot. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good. So this is temperature increasing mechanism. This graph is just showing you the response when there is heat production and when there is heat gain. Now, abnormalities of temperature regulation. So what happens when your body is not able to regulate temperature? When your body is not able to regulate temperature, you have two main states. One is hypothermia. Hypothermia is a decrease in body temperature below the normal range. So when your temperature falls below 36.6 or falls below 36, there's hypothermia. When your temperature rises above 38 or 37, because we said the normal range is 36.6 to 37.1, yes? So when it increases, you're not doing exercise, you are just sitting down and your temperature is reading 37.5, then that is hyperthermia already. It shows that something is wrong. You need to regulate that temperature. And if your body is not able to regulate that temperature, then you are in a state of hyperthermia, you know. And once this hyperthermia continues and your body cannot regulate it, it now leads to fever. So hyperthermia will now lead to fever. And once you have that fever, you need to look for either you take a drug or something to try to bring it down. So this is hyperthermia, fever. Now, increase in body temperature above the normal is hyperthermia. Now, there are certain things that could lead to an increase in your temperature. So anytime you have hyperthermia, there is a rise in the set points by the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus has increased your set points above the 37 degrees that is needed. But why is it doing this? There is something called pyrogene. So pyrogene is anything that will increase your body temperature. Anything that will cause your body temperature to increase, that will cause your hypothalamus to increase the set point of your temperature, is called a pyrogene. So examples of pyrogene, any substance that raises the set point of the hypothalamus from 37 degrees to maybe 37.5 or 38, it's called a pyrogene. Examples of pyrogenes are bacterial endotoxins. So when you have a bacterial infection, yeah, when you have a bacterial infection, most times when somebody has a bacterial infection, you will find that, or the person takes a drug, takes an antibiotics. That antibiotics goes to kill the bacteria. And once that bacteria is killed, the bacteria releases what is called an endotoxin. And that endotoxin acts as a pyrogene, which increases your body temperature. So sometimes you could take an antibiotics and it causes increase in temperature. So antibiotics do not stop temperature or do not stop fever, okay? They rather can lead to an increase in fever because they go to kill the bacteria and the bacteria releases an endotoxin, and that endotoxin causes increase in temperature because your body identifies that there is something, there is a new substance in the blood. What is this new substance in the blood? So your body wants to act to destroy that substance, and that increases your metabolic activities or your metabolic rate and increases your temperature also. And sometimes that high temperature is needed also to deal with the bacteria. Okay, so bacterial endotoxins can increase your temperature and act as pyrogene. Some cell membrane proteins and breakdown products. So when you break down some cell membrane proteins, your body sees it as a foreign substance. This protein is not supposed to be in the blood. It's supposed to be in the cell membrane. But once it is broken down, it leads to an increase in temperature. And you have interleukin-1 also. This is interleukin-1, which are like immune mediators that help immune reaction. They all increase your set point, your body temperature. They will also have inflammatory mediators. When you have inflammation, there's the release of kinin and bradykinin and prostaglandin E. You will do all of these in pathophysiology in third year, okay? They'll teach you about kinin, bradykinin, and prostaglandin. These are inflammatory mediators. They also increase your temperature. It causes your hypothalamus to increase the set point. So anytime there is an inflammation, your temperature will increase. Anytime there is a bacterial infection or you take an antibiotic or there's a breakdown of cell membranes, there will be hyperthermia, okay? Now, when that hyperthermia becomes too much, you could have fever. So you have a crisis, it could lead to fever. When it gets to fever, the temperature is now very, very high, very, very high. And the only way for you to stop that fever is to now take what we call an antipyretic drug. So increase in temperature is caused by pyrogene. Why? To stop that temperature, you take a drug called antipyretics. So antipyretics work to stop or to decrease your temperature, okay? And an example of antipyretics is aspirin or ibuprofen or paracetamol. So these are antipyretics. They help to reduce your temperature. And they do that by blocking prostaglandin E, because we said that prostaglandin E is a pyrogene. It causes temperature to increase. So this, when you take this drug, antipyretics, it will block this prostaglandin E, and that will lead to a decrease in temperature. When we start doing pathophysiology later, I will teach you how it works, you know, the mechanism, how the antipyretics work, the enzymes that catalyze that reaction. I will explain all of that to you in the future, okay? But now you just need to know that pyrogenes increase temperature, while antipyretics help to decrease the temperature by blocking prostaglandin E. So this picture here is simply showing you the set point, what happens when you are hot and when you're cold, vasoconstriction, piloerection, epinephrine secretion, and shivering. All of these help you to increase your body temperature, to the set points, okay? And then this is vasodilation or sweating, helps to decrease the temperature and brings it down to a low value again. So everything I explained, this is just a graph that is showing it. The last thing we need to talk about is what is called heat stroke. Now, heat stroke occurs when your body temperature rises beyond the critical temperature range from 105 to 108 degrees Fahrenheit. Or, by the way, I need to show you one picture that can help you convert your Fahrenheit to degrees Celsius, because you might have an exam, and in that exam, they might give you the values in degrees Fahrenheit. But if you only know the values in degrees Celsius, it might be difficult for you to understand the question. So this picture here, I'm going to show you now. It will help you convert from degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit. So here you can convert from degrees Fahrenheit to degrees Celsius to Kelvin. To get Fahrenheit, it is 1.8 times the value in Celsius plus 32. That will give you Fahrenheit. So for example, if you want to convert 37 degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit, you just multiply 37 degrees Celsius times 1.8, then plus 32. That will give you the value in Fahrenheit. And then to convert from Celsius to Kelvin, you just add the value of the Celsius to 273. That will give you the value in Kelvin. Then to get degrees Celsius, it is Fahrenheit minus 32 divided by 1.8. Okay? So the same thing. To get Celsius is Kelvin minus 273 degrees. So that is how to convert, okay? So when they tell you, for example, in the slide we were looking before, they said 108 degrees Fahrenheit. You have heat stroke when your body temperature increases above 108 degrees Fahrenheit. So now we need to convert that to Celsius. How do you convert 108 degrees to Celsius? To be 108. So this is Celsius, right? So we'll put the value of the Fahrenheit here, 108 minus 32 divided by 1.8. Can you do that in your calculator and tell me what you will get? 108 minus 32 divided by 1.8.
You
have a calculator?
I don't have a calculator. Yeah.
Okay, let me do it. So 108 minus 32. 108 minus 32, that is 76, yes, divided by 1.8. 1 minute, 76 divided by 1.8, that is 42 degrees Celsius, okay? So 108 degrees Fahrenheit is the same thing as 42 degrees Celsius. So you have heat stroke. You have heat stroke when your temperature rises above 42 degrees Celsius. You have heat stroke when your temperature rises above 42 degrees Celsius. And your body will suffer when you have heat stroke. So this is the last slide. This is the last slide. Good. So when you have heat stroke, you have temperature ranges that are above 42 degrees. Symptoms: dizziness, abdominal distress, vomiting, delirium, loss of consciousness, circulatory shock, and even death because when the temperature rises like this, it will destroy, there will be an excess increase in metabolic activities, and that can lead to destruction of cells, excessive production of metabolites that are not needed, you know. So all of these are the symptoms of heat stroke, and it can lead to death if it is not handled quickly, okay?
Yes, sir.
Now, one of the ways to reduce the temperature is called tepid sponging, where you take a piece of cloth, put it in water, and put it on the head of the child, for example, so that heat can be conducted from the body to that piece of cloth. So that will help reduce the body temperature. Then hypothermia. Hypothermia is when your temperature decreases, you know, below 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperature decreases below that, you have hypothermia. And if you enter ice water for 20 to 30 minutes, you could die because that cold temperature will lead to what we call heart fibrillation, which I will explain later when we look at cardiac arrhythmias of the heart. So you lead to fibrillation, and that fibrillation can lead to death. Okay, so the body temperature has fallen below 85 degrees, and the hypothalamus is not able to regulate the temperature because it is too low, far, far below the ability of the hypothalamus to regulate. So you have that hypothermia, and that could also lead to what we call frostbite. When the body is exposed to extremely low temperatures, the surface of your fingers can freeze. In this country, when there is winter, when it is very cold, people have frostbite. Or if a homeless person sleeps on the street in winter and is not properly covered, that cold temperature could lead to what we call frostbite. That's what you see in this picture now. So the ears can be affected, and the digits of the hands and the fingers can be affected. So that is all about temperature regulation. It was a very long lecture. We spent more than the time was supposed to spend, but it's good because I think it is good that we finish this topic so that next time we would pick another topic. Good. Do you have any question?
No, sir.
No question? Okay. If there is no question, I think that will be the end of our class. So I'll see you in the next class. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye.